The fucking July. Huh? How did it get to July so quickly?
We made it. We made it.
Oh, wait. I better delete the tests, right?
Oh, yeah. That's probably a good thing to do, huh?
Probably both of them.
It's not even showing up on my... Oh, here it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Oh, we're live right now?
We are live right now. This is Foreign and Domestic, episode 20. We made it.
That's some sort of milestone.
Yeah, our work
right?
here is done. Hanging up the headphones and the mic after this, I think.
What'd you say before? Didn't you say like we beat podcasting?
We've completed podcasting now.
You said that at like episode 10.
We've got the golden mic.
Yeah, so now what? Now we have like 2 infinity stones. Something like that.
Yeah. Episode 20. Another little funky Friday jam. It's a rainy day here in the capital region. Kind of a sleepy day too. I don't know how you feel, Ramon, but I could have took a nap multiple times today. I don't know if it's the concrete work or what, but I was tired.
For sure. For sure.
But yeah, with all that being said, we were off the last week, and were you off 2 weeks or last week? I don't even know.
Just last week. It's been 2 weeks.
It's been 2 weeks. But I think it was well needed. But this week there was a lot of stuff popping up in the news that some of you may have seen, some of may have, looked into more, but we'll definitely chop it up on some of the bigger things that, caught our eye. So Ramon, do you want to lead us off with something juicy? Any quick hits or tidbits you want to share with the peeps?
Yeah, we got a few things we could get into here. I think we should just pick up right what we were just suggesting. The India Walton story. I think that's a good thing to kick off this episode with, especially coming off of last week's. The big part of the reason why we took time off was because we picked a few winners, folks. Omar McGill, congratulations,
Shout out.
sir. He just county legislator, just won the primary race. Carl Williams, Damani Farley. And this sort of rolls perfectly right into it. Let's pick back up there. So, folks, India Walton just won, I think it was last week, right? Yep. The primary for the mayoral race in Buffalo, New York. She is a self-proclaimed Democratic socialist. Now, that's pretty big because she's the first socialist mayor of a major American city in probably, 5 or 6 decades, I believe it was.
Yep. The last one was in Minnesota. Was it like in the 50s or something?
Yeah. So you got to reach back. And not to mention, she beat the incumbent 52-45. That's pretty, for a first time run. Mm-hmm. I don't think people realize how huge that is. Typically, now granted, to be fair, like some of the media coverage, like they kind of like Buffalo. Anyone who lives in upstate New York, like if you've been to Buffalo, it's not New York City. You know what I mean? Like it's not even, I would say, close to a top 3 major city in a lot of other states in America. Probably because it was industrialization era, a big city. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So everyone who lives here knows that a lot of the larger cities have faded. Especially coming from Schenectady. So it's sort of a flyover country.
I will say it does. It definitely has some big city issues that.
For sure.
It does have that. Need for someone with kind of new ideas as well. I will say that, even though it is not in its heyday.
But I'm saying just as far as like national markets go, whether you're talking about sports, politics, anything like that, pretty insignificant. But population wise, it's definitely there. It's pretty large. So she won that race. Now the reason we're bringing her up is I think it's there's some decent political analysis to be done here because it's going to pivot perfectly into our Jim Clyburn story that we have later.
Boom.
So the incumbent that she beat, I'm actually blanking. I don't write his name in my notes, but he's kind of, who cares, right? Who cares what the guy's name is? We'll find out later. Can you Google that actually? Yes. Can you pull that up, Jamie, while I keep chatting? Thank you. So the gentleman that she defeated is actually doing what a lot of sore establishment candidates do after they lose a primary. He is going to run a write-in campaign in the general against her.
Yep.
Now this is significant because anyone who's watched larger races,
Byron Brown
in states like Byron Brown. Okay, cool. Anyone who's watched larger races, especially ones that gain national media attention, in blue states like New York or California. This is sort of like the the bad guy in the movie or like the cartoon or the comic where it's like, oh, we beat him, and then it's like, but he's not dead yet. Like he's coming, but he's rising back up. He used a potion. He used a revive. He's gonna run again against her in the general, and he's being supported by right-wing real estate developers in Buffalo, the Police Benevolent Association, and Nick Langworthy, our New York State Republican committee chair. So that's interesting. This is something that got talked about a lot during the Bernie Sanders campaign, certainly. Both of them, 2016 and 2020, how, people made some generalized statements that ended up being proven true by the way that the politics shook out, which was, a liberal will side with a conservative over a socialist every time. Yep. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Like, this guy was a Democratic mayor, Democratic Party guy, and now he's getting bolstered by the right wing of the New York State Party. So, surprise, surprise.
You're not too many steps removed from one or the other when you're talking about establishment Democrat politics.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Well, because again, it's like you talk about on the show all the time, what's actually going to threaten power. You know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, the Republicans in New York State saber rattle and get mad, and they try to recall Cuomo every year and do all this silly stuff that they have real no political power to do. But at the end of the day, if a socialist pops up to run for governor, best believe they will
unify.
Fusion dance DBZ style. Yeah. Yes, real quick against that person, right. And that's exactly what's happening here. So Patter, I think that you have better knowledge of recall on the back. Can you just give us some background on India Walton, because I just read her story today, and it's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I want to say and I don't want to get it wrong, but she was pregnant at the age of 14 or 15.
Freshman in high school.
She had to complete her GED while she was pregnant. Then she went ahead and became a nurse. Correct me if any of this sounds wrong.
Nope, you're on point.
She became a nurse. Then she kind of really got into the workers' rights side of things and got a more established position within the union there. And then from there, she, what was it now? After the union stuff, where did she go after that? I was only reading AOC's tweet on it the other day where she laid everything out that she was doing.
Well, yeah. So she was nursing for a while. She was an RN,
right.
And then let me see. And then in 2017, this is from BuffaloNews.com. In 2017, Walton said she was on an approved family leave from her nursing job to take care of one of her sons when she was invited to a conference about community organizing that was being held in Spain. So she says, quote, "So I called my sister and asked her to look after my child while I went to Barcelona for 3 days for a professional development opportunity." Now, when Kalita officials learned about the trip, that was her employer at the time, Walton said she was threatened with termination, and a union representative suggested that she resign, which she did. But then she said, quote, "Leaving the job felt like it was a blessing to me because it allowed me to pursue what I really wanted to do, and that was work on policy and be able to impact my community at a broader scale."
Right.
So this is the perfect example. If you read this article, if you just Google Buffalo News, India Walton, the reason that I wanted to talk about her today was because not only is it just a phenomenal electoral story for, people who, are of her ilk, like I am. I'm a democratic socialist, and it's great to see, some people who have fresh perspectives, fresh ideology, take control in significant ways in our political system. But it's really crazy because the reason that this article pops out is because it's basically her being completely open and transparent with her own local news, asking her questions.
Yes.
And she's basically getting ahead of all the attacks that are about to come after her.
Embracing.
Yeah, because she had been arrested. She explains that in this article. That's also great. It's honestly, it's not only just on a personal level, like, her having a child at 14, finishing up her
When
GED,
she
trying to go through school, got a job to, support her child.
right.
She actually left home when she got pregnant voluntarily and went and stayed with Our Lady of Victory, which is probably some sort of charitable
Yeah.
organization that helps young teen mothers,
Right.
so that she wouldn't put a burden on her own family
So
with a child that couldn't financially support her or the child.
So yeah, she became a mother at 14, and then she got pregnant with twins when she was 19. They were born prematurely, but still finished up her GED. That propelled her into wanting to be a nurse. From there, she graduated and then represented her union. Then she became director in the Community Land Trust. And much like you were saying, all those things, if you're a true progressive and someone who values that sort of life experience and adversity, overcoming that adversity, but still hitting the messages that, we would want to hear, that shit endears it to people.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're not dealing with somebody who hasn't gone through the struggles that, because of her story, teen mother, it's an incredible story, but it's not uncommon.
No.
You know what I mean? The difference is she probably was like, okay, let me go be a registered nurse because of my experience. Let me go get involved in my union. Let me go get involved in the Community Land Trust based off of her experience.
Right.
And what's amazing is that she did embrace those things, got ahead of them, and actually flipped it and used those as ways to, seem strong, which she clearly is,
Yeah, and I mean, and she should be, honestly. She's it's obviously it's cynical what the Republicans are doing, allying with the Democratic Party against her, but Republicans or anyone who's a libertarian, self-reliance, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. She did.
Yeah.
She did. This is like the epitome of what you all claim you value the most in what people should do in society, and she fucking did it. All right.
Right.
She's the goddamn mayor of Buffalo, or about to be, because there's no way this guy's gonna beat her. The chance of someone coming in on a write-in campaign, because mind you, it's write-in, right? So he's not going to run as a Republican. So that's also important, because he doesn't have any other party line to run on. He's just going to be a write-in. So like by definition, he's going to lose. I'm just keeping it real, folks.
I like that the Working Families Party and the Democratic Socialist Party of America, they've once again showed their strength. They've obviously backed her and stuff, and they've played a part in even the local elections here that we've covered. And I love the fact that she embraced being a socialist. We often talk about how it seems like a dirty word for a lot of people here in America when you mention the word socialist. She's like, I'm a socialist. That doesn't mean she's looking to have everybody dressed in red and and fucking singing tunes that she wants people to sing. But I think it was a great story, and I only caught wind of it because I saw on Twitter the Democratic Socialists were tweeting about her, 2 months ago.
Right.
And I thought it was a great story, and I'm really, really glad. I mean, what's crazy as well is that she'll be the first female mayor of Buffalo in 2021. Not to mention female person of color coming from this, from the background that she's had. I mean, that's just a great story. I mean, you tell me that that's not if you want to fucking have the storybook of American story, that is it right there.
Yeah. And just the last thing I wanted to say that I meant to pivot before when I was speaking was, not only is her own personal story amazing, but it's actually like, it's so easy and obvious. Like when we had our discussions before where we were talking about Israel, Palestine, and like, when the Irish were being, what's the word? By the English being, I'm blanking on the word, but
occupied?
The whole point is occupied. Yeah. But when you can see like a clear political trajectory of what situations what situations lead people to in their politics if they end up getting into them in at some point in their life, like the example of her getting in some altercation with another nurse that she worked with, and the woman, basically being like, "Oh, she threatened me, whatever," because they were like arguing. India claimed she was being bullied online by this woman, blah blah blah. That's not important, but there was a warrant that got put out for her to appear for a violation, basically for it. It got mailed to her ex-husband's house, who she was in the process of divorcing, and then she got arrested for not
failure
reporting
to appear
for the warrant.
Yeah.
And then she goes on and explains about that and talks about how, she talks about how that is an ill of the criminal justice system. We've all seen situations like that where, we rely on mail to like perform criminal justice acts like that. And then it's like, oh, you didn't respond. Oh, even though a huge percentage of, especially New Yorkers, don't live where they get their mail. That's a giant flaw. Another example is where she was accused of, and not accused, it happened because of an honest mistake. They, in this article, it says the headline of this paragraph is "Food Stamp Fraud Alleged." In 2015, she ended up making too much money that year, and she had to pay back $260-something or whatever, which she did.
Yeah.
But that's, this is an example of things that they're going to try to come after her for. They're going to be like, "Oh, welfare queen. She was on food stamps and didn't even deserve it," when it was really, she was on the edge, something that we talked about with Damani Farley, where she was working, but still, though her wages were so low that she still got food stamps. Right?
Yep.
So again, like what you brought up earlier, like this is why she won, folks.
Yeah.
She talked to people about her life. And there's no replacement for that. There is no replacement for when you have a candidate like whoever this incumbent probably was, or, a lot of the people that the Democratic Party tries to run sometimes in some of these bigger races. Now, I'm not talking about this mayor specifically, but they try to put people out that, lacking that lived experience when you're doing door knocking, you're walking around as the candidate and talking to people. Many people know you. You get to leave that imprintation where you can talk to people who will vote for you, and they realize, and it clicks in their head like, wow, I've been through some of this stuff. Like, this person's a real human being.
Yeah, that squeaky clean image of that politician is a thing that's like, hopefully it's gone by the wayside, honestly.
I think the Democratic Party, at their own peril, underestimates how powerful that is in politics now. It's more powerful than a degree from Wharton. It's more powerful than, I successfully started a $10 million business when I was 21. All that stuff, it counts for something. I'm not saying it doesn't, but when you have someone who has lived experience that can speak to their constituents or their future constituents
and the issues
in a way that they understand, man, that's what politics used to be.
And something that's apparent as well, I think, we saw it here, and then, in our own local elections, and then also, with something like this, is grassroots politics fucking works.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it's powerful, and, it can't be taken for granted. It's great to see, love it, fucking love it. And I think, we'd be remiss to say that from one mayoral race to the next, I think we have to talk about what the fuck is going on in New York Cities.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can get into that here. We'll take a little, not cut the live, but Hindenburg, we got to hit record.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That thing.
Yeah.
Forgot
we took a week off, and everything's going crazy.
Yeah. So while we're doing that, can we just have a brief chat about what the hell's going on with the New York mayoral race? Did you see the statement that came out from the Board of Elections there?
Honestly, I read the initial article of when they really people were talking about it. I don't think it had the statement in it, but the full statement, it was basically just people who they were quoting people who were counting and stuff that day.
Well,
and none of it really. You tell me if you have the quote. There's no excuse for it.
Yeah, well, the Board of Elections basically were saying that some of these test ballots, 1,600 test ballots, maybe more.
No, it was 150,000.
Sorry, 150,000.
Yeah, it was
test ballots.
Or plus.
But I don't understand how that could happen. It just shows flaws in the New York voting system.
It really does.
And
are you ready to? You want to synchronize now before we keep going so we can catch some of this?
Yeah. Hold on.
All right. But no, my thing with it is, listen, I get it. Humans are fallible. People are going to fuck up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's you're talking about, and we talked about it, the New York City mayoral race is basically a fucking governor's race. It's a huge race.
Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Oh. All right. Yeah, the New York City mayoral race is huge. It's the same number of people who vote in that than do in some states for governor. Okay? Like it's gigantic, and this is coming off the back of Iowa 2020 or 2019, or yeah, it was 2020. I'm sorry, early 2020, with the explicitly run by the Democratic Party. Um, that caucus, just like this one was, and again, this isn't me like dunking on the party or anything. Obviously, I'm not saying like, oh, they were in on it. No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is for the lay person observing politics and constantly watching how there's all of these issues in our democracy when it comes to actual voting. This is why Republicans can pass dumb shit like, oh, you can't. No one can send anyone absentee ballots. It has to be requested. You can't even nudge and remind people that it's that you can absentee vote. What? No, you need to show ID. I need to see a fucking light bill before you can vote. This is what enables them to do this shit. Is these constant fuck ups, because, and I get it. These folks are under pressure. A lot of these people who do this work aren't even paid. I understand, but it's like, please triple check, quadruple check. How the fuck do you release 150,000 fake votes? And it ran, Patter, how many days was it?
I don't, like 4 or 5 at least.
4 or 5 days it was in the fucking initial counts.
But this is, such malpractice, because, if you look at it all together, this is the first time they've done ranked choice voting.
Right.
The fucking first time they've done ranked. This is off the back of a contentious fucking election for president where there was a ton of heat on so many states about the integrity of our elections. All this does now is, and Eric fucking what's his face Eric Adams, he's using it obviously to kind of throw shade, but all it does is it provides fodder for the same people who are trying to get votes thrown out across the country in different races and presidential races.
It gives fuel to anti-democratic actors in our politics. That it's plain and simple. Yeah. And that's what's so crazy to me is all these national level politicians go on and pontificate about the importance of democracy and all this blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, not that, I mean, we'll get into this larger topic with the Arizona thing later, but it's like, man, you guys really should start like really, we got to start working on this stuff, because you want to talk about like January 6th, QAnon, all these things, these natural conspiratorial theorizations that happen when, culture moves too fast, or, there's perceived slights around electoralism. You can't afford to have these super basic fuck ups happening with this type of regularity. I mean, it's just, and it really gets to the point where it's like, what I said a few episodes ago, where it's like, man, this is happening so much, like it's almost like it's on purpose, not by the party, but like something or someone, like it's on purpose. How are you fucking up a test number of 150,000 votes and letting it rock 4 days and no one caught it?
Who's monitoring that shit? Come on.
Think of how many auditors there are, Patter.
Yeah.
Think of how many auditors there are. There's people who check the count of the person who checked the count of the guy who checked the last count. And we're talking about days. I mean, that's just...
Oh, so I guess the overall consensus, though, is they still think that Eric Adams is going to win, or was it Maya? Who's the progressive candidate? Maya
Wiley, I guess.
Maya Wiley is close. She's a close second, but... I believe from these test ballots, she was up from it, which is why Eric Adams was pissed, naturally.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's from everything I read, it still holds true from what I read, like, the night we were at Omar's party, because they voted. That was their first day, too. Yeah. It's all pretty much, all the projections still hold pretty much the same, that, Adams is out to a huge lead, but it's going to come down to the seconds. Second choices. Yeah. And they're saying that we're not going to know that until probably like a couple of weeks.
Fucking hell.
And I'm sure this isn't going to help.
No.
Oh,
man.
Yep. So, hey, I mean, all my thing is this, like, I get it. Like people who get upset, and especially folks, I'm talking to folks on the left right now, because there's I know a lot of people on the left. I listen to a lot of media figures on the left. I know a bunch of people personally who, they get disappointed by this shit because, like, a bunch of weird, funny stuff happened with Bernie's campaigns. And, it seems like, hey, is the fix in? And, I'll be the first person to tell you, like, there's, like, basically historical evidence that like JFK had mob ties fucking with elections.
Yeah.
Like it's
Unions,
happened
yeah.
in history. It's happened in history. We can point to it. It's not like any person who's trying to tell you like, oh, American democracy is pristine and has never been. That's just a lie, and it's fantasy talk.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that doesn't mean you forgo it, because there is no other option. Let's keep it super real.
Let's keep it a
Look
stack.
through the historical context. If you are on the left, democracy is the only way you will ever have political power.
Yep.
The only way.
And that's a good segue into, I think, what's happening in Arizona, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the Supreme Court slapping down, basically, they take another bite out of the Voting Rights Act with a 6-3 decision. It'll make it much harder to challenge states' restrictive laws, and we've covered this extensively, I think, in one of our earlier episodes. The amount of states that were just throwing out bills and seeing what would stick in order to attack voting rights. There's no two ways about it. So we've seen Democrats trying to fight this. We've seen what's been happening in Texas. Arizona has been one of the most, I guess, closely looked at ones. There's been recounts after recounts, and I kind of lost track of what they were actually doing there at one stage. They were recounting the recount again, or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what would, like, they were all, their party was actually split, the Republican Party, on that too at the end.
Yeah.
I don't know what's been happening there. I mean, but this is a perfect example of, like, I think I mentioned it on the last episode or the one before. Like, it's states like Arizona, Wisconsin, like these states that, you'll get one senator for each party that are like habitually purple but typically lean blue. Like, these are, I'm telling you, like, people were all excited about Georgia. Oh, by the way, this Supreme Court ruling actually completely decimates the DOJ's lawsuit against Georgia for because remember, Georgia was the first state that, at post-insurrection started putting forward new voting laws. Under extreme pressure, they took the power from their Secretary of State. The State House did. They revoked a ton of his powers over elections and took it for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
These laws that they put in place in Georgia put strict constraints on ballot drop boxes. It barred election officials from sending absentee ballot applications to people, and adds identification requirements for voting by mail. And again, I just had a conversation with a guy I worked with previously, like a buddy of mine, where he was like, he was apolitical, but he dove more into it, like, upon meeting me, because anyone who knows me knows that that's like 90% of what I talk about.
He's a good time, I promise.
Yeah, you can't be friends with me and not talk about politics. It's impossible. But he was like, ask me, like, well, is it really voter suppression to ask people for voter ID? And it's like, yeah, anything that makes it so 1% of people won't vote is by definition voter suppression. Yeah, you're suppressing it. I was like, Mike, if I put a pillow an inch from your mouth, are you going to breathe as well? I'm not stopping you from breathing. Right. But it's in your head.
It's a tactic. It's a tactic.
Yeah, I'm putting it right in front of your face. You don't know if I'm going to put it there or not. It's just one more thing. You're putting an extra, even if it's a tiny hurdle that you can literally just step right over. It's not even up to your knee. It doesn't matter.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sorry. It's just.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting, though, was the dissents from some of the justices too, kind of outlining what they thought were the reasons for and against. Typically with the Supreme Court ruling, there'll be dissenting justices giving their opinions on it and not just voting. Justice Alito outlined a few guideposts that courts should consult when examining challenges under Section 2. For starters, they should scrutinize the size of the racial disparity. He's talking specifically about some of the issues that Baranovich versus the DNC. The impact on racial minorities of the Arizona voting laws at issue, nullifying ballots cast in the wrong precinct, and limiting who may collect absentee ballots seemed to spur little alarm among the justices during the oral argument on March 2nd. So, preliminary ballots, correct me if I'm wrong, Ramon, you might have a better idea on this than me, but basically with this new kind of ruling, if you vote in the wrong precinct, your vote really doesn't count. But preliminary votes, if you're voting in state elections, should still count. It's only if you're voting with preliminary ballots. Am I right? Provisional ballots.
Oh, provisionals. Oh, yeah. Well, but the thing is, provisional ballots have always been sketchy all over the country anyway. That's why people always, like, if you listen to any, people who work electorally in your party, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, they'll always tell you, like, don't do it. Yeah. Because they're the easiest thing for any person that's running a race to get thrown the fuck out. And the Supreme Court basically just made them meaningless now at this point, if this carries over through more states, because that's the important thing here, is that this sets precedent.
Right.
But the real, provisional ballots, that's probably like, the biggest concern here is the fact that they're putting all these restrictions around absentee ballots, which, that's a huge problem, especially in, a lot of states that have large metropolitan city centers where people, are on business, not there, whatever. Like you can catch a lot of, you can eliminate a lot, because again, like the regular mathematical equation holds true here. The less people that vote, the better odds Republicans have of victory.
Right.
And that's all we're talking about here.
That's the name of the game for them.
And it really is just shocking, because it's like, folks, like you just quoted, they basically eliminated Article 2 of the Voting Rights Act. It's gone. Like this act has just been getting fucking like Caesar in Rome. Like it's just getting stabbed repeatedly over like the last 12 years or so. It's gone now.
Yeah.
And you add that to the fact that, this is something that I think we talked about it before, where we were talking about I can't remember what episode it was, where, I was railing about Joe Manchin and, what they were proposing, him and
his voting rights bill.
Yeah, his voting rights bill. And this is exactly what I was saying, where I was like, hey, it's good. Hey, let's have election day be a national holiday and all this other stuff. But it's like, we're not doing anything to, because that's really where we're at now, folks. Like, just to, again, like, just zoom out. That's where we're at right now. Like, the Supreme Court is done. This is what, on anything that's important when it comes to what party will be positioned to hold power in the long term, like voting rights. You want to talk about Roe v. Wade, things that will fire up bases on either or side. This is the exact ratio we're going to get. 6-3, 6-3, 6-3, 6-3. It's going to keep happening over and over again. So now, if you're Joe Biden, if you're the Democratic Party, you have to understand the urgency of this situation. The only thing you can do, and real quick before I get to that strategy point, like this is why, because that the DOJ had a lawsuit going against Georgia to stop their voting rights laws that they put in place. This shit takes years sometimes to reach the Supreme Court, right, if they even decide to take it. So if you're in the Democratic cockpit right now, you have to be looking at it like, okay, the best thing that we can do right now, if we want to preserve democracy, we have to blitz out legislation. We cannot fuck around. We're already in a losing position in the long term. So you have to start asserting yourself in a way where you're putting the Republicans back in the reactionary position, because they're on the attack right now.
Yep.
You have to start pumping out that legislation like right now, like tomorrow, because this is what's going to keep happening. This is precedent setting. You're never going to retake the court, not in the next 2 Democrat presidencies, unless, Brett Kavanaugh fucking drinks himself to death one night or something. It's just the reality of it. It's the hard brass tacks. And that's why, like, because I was just listening to that episode, and it's like, I was listening to myself talk about what we were talking about with the Joe Manchin thing. And it's like, man, I fucking hate how, like, I feel like I sound so defeatist and so pessimistic, but it's like, no, this is like the reality. Like, we're facing like a it's David versus Goliath here, folks.
And the more that this shit happens, and I've said it on an episode as well, but like, I'm kind of pissed that fucking what's her face RGB didn't step aside sooner. Like, she should have stepped aside a few years ago. Let's be real.
She was sick for like 7 years.
And then you had another, liberal justice who just resigned during Trump's fucking term. What the fuck are you doing? What do you think this is?
I don't blame someone for being like, hey, I'm 80, I'm gonna stop now. I don't blame that guy. I blame the person who's like, I've had cancer 7 times.
Right.
But I am so caught up in smelling my own prestige that I will not leave.
That's the reality of it. And I tip the hat to everything she did, I guess, for being like the first in, and the breaking that glass ceiling, so to speak. But the
Sure.
more that I see these things play out, the more that I feel like it was super kind of short-sighted of her to just stick in there. Much like we talk about Dianne Feinstein and how she's been getting pressure. It's the same thing.
No different.
Yeah.
Just because it's appointed or elected, it doesn't matter. You have to be realistic with yourself with what your body is capable of doing and what position you're going to leave the ideologies you claim to support in.
Yeah. I mean,
after you leave.
the biggest fucking attack on democracy right now are these voting rights, are the attack on voting rights right now. And it's by Republicans.
Absolutely.
And it's because Republicans know that if they can do that, if they can prohibit people from voting or make it more difficult, that increases their chances, along with their gerrymandering and other tactics. So that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I just, like I said, it's if not for anything, for people who aren't necessarily, because I don't even consider myself one. Like, I try not to worry myself too much with judicial shit because it's so Byzantine and complicated on purpose. So these people can have their whole industry that you have to defer to them for. There's no reason that they have to speak Latin and it's all on purpose. But I feel like I do have a solid grasp on being able to consume people who can translate it into the lay term, and I try not to focus on it too much because it's like, first of all, I feel like the left is forever in a position where we're never going to be in a good spot with the courts, just simply because of we talked about it on super early episodes, like the Heritage Foundation on the right. Like the Republicans have an entire infrastructure built around controlling and being in a powerful position throughout the entire country of every level of the judicial system. Mm-hmm. And Democrats just have no inclination to do that. There's no money behind it. There's no anything. So on that level, we're just going to be at a permanent disadvantage. So I've resigned myself to that.
Yeah.
But what I think, okay, so that's all the more reason to make sure that every Democrat on a national level has the idea, has the game plan in their head. Okay, we just need to be legislative bullies then. Good luck, Republicans. Sure, you can have the courts, have fun turning shit over 2-3 years after America got a taste of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because
yeah.
that's really, look at the ACA.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the ACA. Even though people hated, Obamacare, quote unquote, you've seen all the different studies and videos people have done where I hate Obamacare, but don't mess around with my Medicaid,
mm-hmm.
or whatever, not realizing that all of these things are the fucking same. If not for the efficacy of, now granted, a lot of people hated Obamacare. I didn't like it for technical reasons, but it did save a lot of people, from death.
Right, yeah, and it just provided more care. It did
save a ton of people, and if not for that, I get that, obviously public pressure doesn't really influence Supreme Court stuff on its face, but I think that just like what we were saying with the RGB situation, the adulation that she got, or deservedly.
Yeah,
I'm not saying undeservedly, but these people do, think me and Kate were just talking about the other day, what is it? Serena Williams got hurt at Wimbledon or whatever. And Kate was like, isn't she 40? Why doesn't she just retire? She has kids. I was like, the same reason Michael Jordan didn't retire. Mm-hmm. Same reason Tom Brady's still playing.
Yeah.
When you're the greatest, it's got to be hard. Everyone loves you. Everyone's telling you how great you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember where I was going with this, but I'm trying to get people in the mindset that these folks are people too.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. As much as we want them to go on the ideological crusade or do what we think is the right thing, they're smelling their own farts, man.
Yep.
I'm telling you right now, they fucking love being them, and they love just they got them robes on. Everybody's yes, justice. You know what?
Yeah, it's the pinnacle for any judge. It's it's the Supreme Court. I think this paragraph that I read in The Economist kind of wraps up everything we've been talking about perfectly. He's with the Voting Rights Act now a dead letter for all but vote dilution cases, efforts to draw electoral districts to dampen the influence of minority votes, attention turns across the street from the Supreme Court to Capitol Hill. Democrats in Congress have set voting protections as a top legislative priority, but universal Republican opposition and reticence of several members of their own party to bend filibuster rules may make that effort, like the fight in the courts, an uphill battle. And that's basically what you just said. And as like we were talking about Obamacare and how
It's
like
Sisyphus. It's not even an uphill battle. It's an unending hill.
yeah.
It will not end. We are destined to roll that boulder for life. That's just a fact people got to deal with, man. It really is, man.
Yep. Because if you look at voting, right, it's still pretty archaic in the sense that, how we do it. I think the biggest advancements to it were like some of these voting machines and, absentee voting and all that were some of the newer things, but like it's still kind of the same way it's been for like years and years and years. So with these types of pushbacks, what is going to change in the next 50 years to make it easier for people to vote? There's not much more you can, I mean, there's not much more you can suggest or do that's already been slapped down or kind of tried to pushed away by the Republicans.
Well, I mean, and to be honest with you, it's the thing is like, we've had these conversations before, like, and like, people like, huge people with huge platforms like Joe Rogan, any Andrew Yang, like a ton of people have already said like, hey, the technology's there. Why don't we do anything different? And I'll tell you the answer is because everyone's paranoid and doesn't trust anyone. Yeah. That's why. Yeah. You don't think people in Europe will start doing electronic voting attached to like their fucking mailing address or their social security with what I know they don't have social security numbers there, but like, whatever their
they have the equivalent
government ID number is or whatever. Yeah. They will do it way before we will because we're so worried and do not trust anyone that we're going to be stuck in this. And part of that is why, like my argument for why I think continuing to have, if we do move to some new phase of voting, I think having backup paper ballots is still important and crucial.
Sure.
A lot of people say like we should move away from that because they think that it's, viable to fraud or vulnerable to fraud, but anything is.
Right.
But I think that we're going to be just stuck in this the same way we have been. It's like, this is like, I feel like I say this like every other episode, like we're not, it seems like shit's changing and evolving, but it's really not. It's just like a new fucking, a new costume America's wearing like every couple of years.
Yeah.
It really hasn't changed. Like ever since 2000 election, no one fucking trusts the other side.
And it's getting worse.
There's a ton of Republicans, people like what's his name there, the pinstripe man himself that we keep talking about, blanket Roger Stone. There's a ton of people on the right who basically live by the credo like if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's where we're at with this shit.
I mean
man.
that is tactics. That is tactics.
That's where we're at with this shit. Like let's keep it real, man. I don't know. All I know is if we turn people out and overwhelm the numbers, it's undeniable. And that's honestly the only reason that,
what
Biden got crowned this year. So was because he won convincingly. Because if that had been closer, I think it would have been a lot different.
So if you look at the two things that could, overwhelmingly increase turnout to vote, two simplest things you could fucking do right now: automatic registration and make fucking election day a holiday. Those two things would make it so fucking easy. Why isn't that, like, why is there resistance to that? We know why. Because they know that it would increase turnout. So they've been trying to stop that. That's all we need to say. All these other laws that we kind of put the red flag up that states were doing this, that's all taken out of that playbook. So everything that comes after that, and now the Supreme Court backing all of that up, I'm with you. I'm kind of a pessimist on this too. I don't really see, how it's going to like ease up where this is not going to be a battle for the next, I don't know how many years, but.
Well, it's like we've talked about a bunch of times before. Like this is, we talked about it in the sense, I think it was through the lens of like coronavirus and stuff, how things went. Like America is 50 little countries. And that's how the people who live in those states view themselves. It's easy for European countries to just be like, oh, okay, we're all going to do this thing, because they like have some national identity. We don't have a national identity in this country. We have an identity around some rights that we all kind of loosely agree on. Right. But for the most part, like, oh, I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Floridian. I'm whatever. And then those state houses are like, fuck you, I'm making my own voting rules.
Yeah.
So until either Democrats sweep state houses, which isn't going to happen, it's just not going to happen because these laws keep getting passed, and they control the Supreme Court. That's why state houses aren't going to be taken back. Gerrymandering, all of these laws are going to get put through. That state houses basically have control over their BOEs, and secretaries of states don't. Okay, so what's left? Federalization. Like you have to win the hearts and minds of the people who live in this country somehow.
Yeah,
And that's the only way you're going to pierce that veil. Other than like a decades long, painfully, methodically takeover state by state, wins and losses. That's the only way, man. And I think that the way that the Democratic Party has itself structured right now with its own ideological leanings, they're just not in any position to do that first option I said. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't have enough buy-in amongst even people in their own party, let alone fucking Republicans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
it's sad.
I don't know. It is sad.
It is sad. What the fuck is going on?
But
Picture?
we got to keep putting Buffalo mares in. That's the only, like I said, I think that's the only route. And it's sad because I didn't used to agree with that. You saw a person like Bernie take stage and literally smash the Overton window to the left in the course of 5 years, and that gave real hope. But it's like, who's next? You know what I mean? You got it. There has to be a figurehead, and I don't see any. So
me either. Me fucking either. Why did I get mad orange? I'm like something from the Oompa Loompa factory or something.
You look a lot whiter than yellow than before.
Do I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Weird. I'm just gonna rock with it. I don't care.
So here, while we're on voting, why don't we pivot to the Nina Turner story?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so I'm gonna lead this one off.
Go ahead.
So folks, we have our good buddy from South Carolina, Mr. Jim Clyburn, the number 3 Democrat in the House. This is from the New York Times, by the way. There's like a couple funny things in this article. Like they have the information's good, but like whoever wrote this, LOL. So right in the first sentence here, in a rare intervention into a party primary, Mr. Clyburn, a veteran lawmaker, but a rare intervention into a primary battle. I mean, that's fucking rich.
Yeah.
Like, they're literally writing this like 2020 never happened. What are you talking
like
about?
he didn't
What do you
hand
mean?
it to Biden.
He didn't. Oh, I'm not even gonna do it.
Don't do it.
I'm not gonna do it. A veteran lawmaker and the highest-ranking Black member of Congress endorsed Shontel Brown, Mrs. Nina Turner's leading opponent. Now, just a little background information in case anyone doesn't know who Nina Turner is. She's probably, I would argue, the strongest female politician in the country. And when I say that, I mean like she goes in a room and talks to people, and you can, she's got the juice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
She was formerly in the Ohio State Senate. She was appointed in 2009 or 2010, I believe, and then she won the actual seat and was in for 4 years. And then in 2014, she ran for Secretary of State of Ohio and lost to an establishment candidate from the party. So just a little background information. She was also a Bernie Sanders surrogate for 2016 and 2020. Vehemently attacked a lot of the people who did underhanded shit to Bernie that he wasn't willing to call out or go after. But look her up. So anyway, so Mr. Clyburn said his decision to back Miss Shontel Brown, the chairwoman of the Cuyahoga County Democratic Party, which remember that because Cuyahoga County is huge in Ohio, folks, as far as electoralism goes. So she sort of like was next up. Yeah, if you ever watch election coverage of like, Biden versus Trump or any of those, you go back, watch Hillary versus Trump, like you'll always hear like, oh, now coming in Cuyahoga County. Yeah. It's like this most influential place in Ohio for electoralism. So he says that his decision to back Mrs. Brown, Mr. Clyburn, his decision to back Mrs. Brown was not about Mr. Sanders or Miss Turner, who remains the favorite before the contest on August 3rd in the heavily Democratic district. But he took a swipe at what he called the sloganeering of the party's left flank, which has risen to power with calls for Medicare for all and to abolish ICE and defund the police. He says, quote, "What I try to demonstrate by precept and example how we are to proceed as a party. When I spoke out against sloganeering like, quote, burn baby burn in the 1960s and defund the police, which I think is cutting the throat of the party, I know exactly where my constituents are. They are against that, and I'm against that." So once again, just like a fucking just galaxy brain take from Mr. Clyburn here, where it's like, I'm not endorsing the person running. I'm not endorsing. I don't have a problem with Miss Turner or Bernie. I don't like that they use slogans. What does that even mean?
What is it?
Hatter.
But is it in the fucking article that the candidate they're going to run against is backed by Big Pharma? Did he mention that?
No, they did not actually. The New York Times failed to mention.
They failed to mention that. Okay.
Yes, they did fail to mention that. I mean, hey, folks, the Times is my main paper, but they love to omit where it's convenient.
I mean, that tells you all, just because that tells you all you need to know. The coffers funded by Big Pharma want to run a candidate that is not for Medicare for all, for obvious reasons.
Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, so I just, I thought it was a great story while we're on this electoral tiff here, talking about all this, because, I honestly, I find it ironic because I know that, for example, like one of Mr. Clyburn's staffers were asked a similar line of questioning on this in another article I read, and they were basically, that person basically responded about, what was behind his endorsement or whatever, and they were just like, oh, well, Nina Turner has been an enemy of the party. Like, so like people are just throwing shots. And I just think it's amazing because this is honestly a failing mission for them. Oh, by the way, this woman, Chantel Brown, is endorsed by like Hillary Clinton, Clyburn, basically has a silent endorsement of Barack Obama. You go to her campaign page, it's a picture of her standing with him in front of American flags. Okay. So let pay attention, folks. That's the sneaky endorsement, non-endorsement.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have to ask to use a former president's picture. You can't just fucking put that up there. Okay. So they're sending little messages. Now, the reason I'm saying like this is them just like on some hopeless like literally this is like 300 at the hot gates. They can slay a bunch of leftists on the way, but they can't hold back the horde. Nina Turner there's 9 people in this race, and she's polling at 50% last poll that came out mid-June. And Mrs. Brown, the woman Clyburn endorses, at 15%, with 21% undecided, with the other 7 candidates in the race totaling a mere 11 or 13% between the 7 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So this pretty much seems like a hopeless fight. Don't know why they're doing this. This is just a message. This is them circling the wagons around an influential Democratic up-and-comer, a black woman in Ohio, Mrs. Brown, and just showing people that, yeah, we'll flex for our people. And anyone who is still, and again, so this right here is important because I want people to remember this. Joe Biden is president, right? Mr. Clyburn did the same thing on the behalf of Obama, reportedly, interjecting himself into the race, endorsing Biden over Bernie, even though his own state, many of the endorsements of all of the all the unions in that state, a ton of the grassroots support was for Bernie, and he pushed against. Now, I want people to just remember this because this is them showing right now, like, this fight, it's not over. There is going to be no unification within the Democratic Party as far as electoralism goes. We're still going to try to snipe people that come in, even if it isn't a winning shot. Even if we can't get the headshot, we're going to try to body you up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to set the standard. We're going to set the precedent that people like Nina Turner and, Killer Mike or anyone who says things that we don't like about the party will forever be an enemy. And that's basically what this is. It's a shot across the bow. They know it's not going to hit the boat, but they're letting them cannons ring off. That's basically what they're doing.
Yep. That's what it is. And, when I saw it come in on my breaking news, I don't even know why it was breaking news. But the first thing I thought about is Ramona's going to fucking eat this up. I saw I saw the name Jim Clyburn endorses Big Pharma backed candidate.
I love Nina Turner, dude.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to love? She's tenacious. She doesn't take any shit.
None.
She was unlucky not to. Didn't she? What did she run for last time?
2014, she ran for Secretary of State of Ohio.
Right. But this last campaign for Bernie, she was she was, she spoke at a number of things I watched.
Yeah.
Just on a side note, did I read something in Axios that people are turning on Bernie Sanders? Have you read on that?
Poor people.
Like they were saying, progressives are gone sour on Bernie Sanders. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell. I mean, you know me, I consume a ton of leftist media. So that's been like, as soon as there's sort of two camps, right? Like people who are like neck deep in politics on the left, and when I say the left, I mean like Democratic Socialist and left from them.
Right.
There's a ton of people who felt forgone by Bernie because he, we talked about it. He played the only card he had left after he lost, which was, okay, I'm going to work with you. I will poke you in the media if you don't. There are a bunch of those people who are just mad basically and said, oh, Bernie sold out because he didn't really make any demands.
Right.
Which I disagree with. There has been plenty of little things that he's still been and the reason he's able to go so negative against Joe Biden with a lot of his, the infrastructure plan, for example, the $15 minimum wage, a lot of that's because Bernie, when he, it's reported, again, Bernie hasn't said this out loud because he never will, because that's not the kind of politician he is. But there's been people who were in his camp at the time when he conceded, where all those things I just named were requirements of him dropping out. They were concession requirements. So that proves that's why Bernie is able to attack Joe in that way, and no one in the party really says anything about it because it's an understood thing.
Right.
Now, I think that those people don't have the depth of political, I don't want to call it knowledge, but just insight to understand when a politician's lifespan has run its course, and that is the case for Bernie. Like, what more do you? He sold out for us, man.
Right.
What more do you want from this guy?
Well, here's what it says in the Axios that I came across. It says 3 factors are fueling the shift. Some feel that he's not pushing President Biden far enough to the left anymore. Some believe his time at the movement leader has simply passed, which you're saying. Some fear tying their brand to Sanders is a gift to opponents to weaponize in crowded primaries or in general elections, and they're instead weighing the merits of aligning more directly with Biden. Now, even some of Sanders' closest allies, like Nina Turner, his 2020 campaign co-chair, who's running in a hotly contested August 3rd Democratic primary for a special election in Ohio, which we've just been talking about, haven't been running with his endorsement front and center.
She is endorsed by Bernie, by the way.
Yeah, but what they're saying is it hasn't been front and center. She hasn't been kind of, which...
Well, she hasn't needed to pull that card.
Exactly.
She's washing everyone.
She's fuck up 50% in the polls.
She's washing everyone.
What they're saying, when I'm knocking door to door, people aren't asking me about endorsements, Turner tells Axios. The race that I'm running is about Ohio, District 11, and I'm the one running this race. Turner is running on Sanders' liberal agenda, but not his name. The senator and I are still close. We forged a strong relationship, and we still have to this day. Jeff Weaver, a longtime Sanders aide and consultant to Turner, said in a statement, the progressive movement is in a period of maturation. Progressives have shown that they can inspire voters and win a state after state, as Bernie did in 2016 and 2020. Now they're showing they can govern in an effective and principled way in coalition with more conservative elements of the party.
I disagree with that, but that's not true. But
okay, so here's the interesting part that ties all this to it. Turner's political dilemma is more complicated. Aides and backers tell Axios that part of the calculation around Sanders is actually the fact that Ohio's 11's voters overwhelmingly embraced Biden last year. In a crowded primary, they don't want to give Turner's opponents any easy ways to argue that her ties to Sanders would pit her against Biden or make her unwilling to work with more moderate Democrats. But I mean, the case in point is what Jim Clyburn is trying to do right now.
Sure.
He recently got involved in Turner's race to endorse one of her opponents. Instead of making the endorsement about Brown, Clyburn seemed to take his frustrations with some progressive colleagues out on Turner. And they just quote the New York Times, basically, what you just said.
Sloganeering.
Yeah.
Fucking bullshit. Medicare for all it's a policy, dickhead. That's not sloganeering.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing he said. We're talking about rehauling our fucking ancient, just dusty in the ass medical system in this country. And he's calling it sloganeering. I mean, that's really incredible.
Yeah. He's dusty too.
Yeah. But no, my, like, to finish button up my thought on that with the Bernie thing, like, perfect example, Patter, me and you doing this show right now, right? Like, we took a week off. This is a lot of work. You got kids. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Imagine being the lodestone for all liberal hatred, representing democratic socialists and anyone to the left of them for 5 years, and you're about to turn 80 in September.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who has more expectations of this man is wildly unrealistic.
Yep.
He's doing exactly what the situation calls for. He came through. He was Grond from Lord of the Rings. He was the hammer from hell that blew the fucking doors of Minas Tirith open.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? For all you Lord of the Rings fans out there. He blew that motherfucker open. And now all these leftists came pouring in behind him. And what do after that? You move out of the fucking way and let them be who they are.
Yep.
Okay? You can't. He's not. It's too late. Listen, he was literally like, I don't know, any other architect. I don't want to say Gandalf because like he was a wizard, and that's I just did a Lord of the Rings reference. Like any other like old, like folks, that was his last of his life essence he had.
Yeah.
Do you know how much work this man has done in the last 5 or 6 years? And you have the nerve to be like, he's a sellout?
He planted the tree that he'll never sit under the shade of.
It's ridiculous. And the thing is, I get where it comes from. It's what we talked about. It's the frustration of feeling like, okay, yeah, I agree. He did a bunch of good stuff, but like nothing changed. I agree. Yeah, it's not. But you know what? It's because there's an entire machine we have to dismantle nut by bolt by nut by bolt.
That you're seeing in operation in this Nina Turner race.
It is happening. Yeah, no, exactly, man. Yeah. Like you can't put it all on one person, and that's like a huge failing of the American political perspective in general.
Mm-hmm.
Is sure, I rail on Biden, I rail on Clyburn, I rail on Manchin, but again, I'm doing that from a place of, and what do I always bring it back around to? Like, I'm railing at what the ideology they've been steeped in that created them. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. And that's what Nina brings it back to. That's what Bernie always brought it back to. It wasn't about him, not me, us, right? That was his thing. The reason he did that was because it wasn't about him. It's not about any one individual. Mm-hmm. It is about changing minds and hearts around what we think change needs to be done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, so whatever. I don't even know. That's the thing. Like, how are they going to write that headline? Who's frustrated with him then? Like, no one of any prominence. It's just people on Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reality.
That's all it is.
And the people who are frustrated with Bernie are the people who are always frustrated with Bernie, those establishment politicians who want to not have something like Medicare for all.
I mean, last I checked, he's still the most popular politician in the country. So,
yeah.
Well, okay.
And he talk about a change agent in terms of politics in the last fucking 8 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, I disagreed with, he didn't have the greatest political instincts while in electoral runs, but he does understand political strategy. He made almost every chess move correctly outside of electoralism, I would argue.
And much in the same vein as you know, India Walton, you know, and obviously he did it first, but he was unapologetic for what he ran on. He didn't try to fucking dodge in and out of these things. He was flat out what he wanted and what he said he wanted. And I mean, that's why I remember the excitement I got around Bernie Sanders in 2015 when I started, like, you know, I knew of him, but the magnetism was around that campaign. And when I started listening to his speeches and listening to what he was talking about, there was no, you know, like, you know, sexy type of slogans or anything like that. It was just a real dude talking about, you know, kind of curmudgeon-y, talking about fucking things that he couldn't understand were still a thing, and why, you know, why this wasn't, why people weren't having Medicare for all and shit like that. Yeah, I mean, I love Bernie. There's no two ways around it. And you know, it is sad that he's the age that he is, that, you know, he is coming to the end of all that. But his legacy is something that's written into American folklore now. I don't care what anybody says.
Oh, absolutely. Regardless of how history views him, because the victor will probably, the course we're on, inevitably be a neoliberal writing that history.
Yeah.
The people who lived it will know, and it will be, like you said, it will be folklore. It will be passed on. There will be people in other countries telling their children about how a man, an old Jewish man from Brooklyn, tried his hardest to stop America from fucking up. He tried his darndest.
He did.
Because he had international support, bro.
Yeah.
Wasn't nobody fucking hopefully cheering on Hillary Clinton from European countries that wasn't like a white collar person making $250,000 a year.
We knew she was a warmonger.
No, what's that?
We knew that she was a warmonger.
No,
People
I know,
that.
And that's my point. That's what I was saying. Like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Nah, that means legacy is fucking pristine in my opinion.
Yep.
And I would debate anyone on any of those points about, oh, he failed here, he failed there. And it's like, yeah, you know what? People make mistakes, but at the end of the day, the guy had the right idea and the grand strategy of the game, and
he's been singing the same fucking tune, and he's voted pretty solidly his entire career. I'd put his voting record against anybody for the most part. On the big
certainly
issues.
In the Senate.
Yeah.
Certainly in the Senate. Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
But yeah.
Without a doubt. But yeah, all right. So here, you wanna do Biden infrastructure as the last one?
Yeah,
here?
let's do it. Let's ring that out and fucking.
Oh man, I don't want to even really do this.
I don't want to either.
Huge, so we have to. This is gigantic. This is a huge. Well, especially since we touched on it so much. Like we touched on like the lead up to the talks about it. We talked about his plan he actually released, and now we're all the way down to the capitulation phase, folks. For anyone who's in finance, that's where we're at. We're at capitulation. We had our boom. We had our boom cycle. We all the crypto boom happened. We had our 50% shot up, and now
keep going. I'm just trying to fix my camera. It's gone weird.
Oh, I got you. All right, so yeah, folks. Anybody who's been following along of our coverage of the Biden infrastructure plan, it took some huge steps back recently this past week. This has been a slowly trickling story across like the last 5 or 7 days, something like that. I'm losing track of time because we haven't recorded in a couple weeks. But the new infrastructure plan, which was, Biden made plenty of statements a couple weeks ago where he was talking about, it needs to be bipartisan. That was the main goal. And it's important to remember here the context before we get into the actual breakdown here is he initially said that his goal was for it to be a bipartisan compromise, but there needed to be a reconciliation bill to follow it up. That was basically what his demand was on Congress. Okay. Then it turned out that, they had the little, what were they called? There's like all these gangs. There's like the gang of 21 for one bill. I think it was like the gang of 10.
Gang of 8. Yeah, all this.
Yeah, I think it was the gang of 10 for this one with Romney and 9 other Republicans, blah, 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 whatever. That was after Biden was negotiating with, I believe it was Marsha Blackburn. And that fell through.
Good luck.
Just a whole bunch of fucking bullshit strung out across the entire month of June. But now we're here, and the new plan is only $1.2 trillion total, with only $529 billion in new spending. And the shortfall, or the gap between those two numbers, is being taken from his only legislative victory, Democrats' only legislative victory so far this year, the stimulus legislation.
Stimmy.
Leftover money. So it's already appropriated. And the reason this is important, folks, is typically when there's a huge package of something that goes through in the same year, and it's your party's legislation, you don't want to have to dip back into that to compromise with Republicans and be like, okay, I won't spend as much. I'll use a little bit of the money you let me use last time. That's so huge power move right there. Off jump from Republicans, like that. They actually whittled this man down to, yeah, you're only getting $5.5 billion, assholes, and you're gonna, if you want anything else, it's gonna come out of your stimmy kitty we never voted for in the first place. So it would only make a dent in the country's infrastructure investment shortfall, despite the fact that it might be, this is also from the Times, by the way, despite the fact that it might be the last chance Democrats have to do anything about the issue for years. And actually, let me correct that. That's not true. This is actually from The Nation. So this new infrastructure bill is promising to spend $125 billion a year on climate for 8 years. So 125 every year for 8 years. It falls short of the $1 trillion organizations like the Roosevelt Institute have estimated needs to be spent annually for the next decade to prevent unimaginable climate catastrophe, which we've all been witnessing in the news for the last week now. And we'll probably touch on it. I know I feel kind of bad that we didn't talk about that this week because it was huge, but I'm sure it'll keep on. It's summer, so it's going to keep being wild. We can talk about it anytime.
First hurricane just hit today too, Elsa.
Yeah. So, and according to, the Roosevelt Institute and many other think tanks that have put out these projections, this is actually not even a half measure; it's an eighth measure by that math, 125 billion instead of the 1 trillion per year. And then meanwhile, regarding the actual threat of climate change, of things that Biden promised on the campaign trail and in his first initial rollout of his infrastructure plan, the deals includes nearly 100 billion for clean energy projects. And it excludes the clean energy standard originally proposed. So that's important because if you guys remember when we first broke down this infrastructure bill, like I think it was like, what was it? Like it was like 100 billion alone just for like highway, like charging stations and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're at, it's going to be just 100 billion for clean energy projects, like period. So we're talking about like severe reduction. This is combined with the fact that this is not being the deal wasn't accepted where it was like, we want this 1 point whatever trillion and the reconciliation bill afterwards, which didn't even make sense as a negotiating principle in the first place, because you're basically saying to them, you have to deal with me on this infrastructure plan, this first one we do, this first bill, and then we're going to go do one on our own after, as if they care about that second part. Mm-hmm. That doesn't even make any sense. We weren't on to talk about that when that happened last week, when he came out and like made that threat, but it's not a threat. That doesn't even make any sense. That's like telling your girlfriend like, we'll have sex tonight, but like, I'm going to jerk off after or something. Like it has nothing to do with it. Right? It has nothing to do with her. Like that threat meant nothing. I don't understand where.
That's a great analogy.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I'm so annoyed but not surprised by this. I mean, we've literally talked about this since the first mention of infrastructure after the second or the most recent American Rescue Act.
Yeah.
And what was the number that it originally started out at? Do you remember?
I think it was like it was high 2 trillions.
And
I believe like 2.5, something like that.
All this time whittling it down. And in the midst of all that, you have Mitch McConnell saying, what he says. And it was pathetic to watch from, the Biden administration standpoint, that they were kowtowing down to all demands, doing a lot of this pomp and circ, fucking bringing guys into his office thinking he's going to get stuff done, which, I mean, granted, you want to have conversations with the other side, but only if you fucking think you're actually negotiating. This is not a negotiation. This is a shakedown. Nope. It's a shakedown.
Absolutely.
And at the end of it, and, this might be a leap, but we all know America's infrastructure is fucking shit right now.
Absolutely.
And case in point, I mean, I know it's a private condo, but what we saw in Florida, that type of shit is going to happen to public roads, to buildings, you name it.
Bridges.
We
just watched a bridge.
Yep.
Had structural issues like a couple weeks ago.
And you tie that into what's happening with climate change. All this stuff is weakening this infrastructure even further. And there's no sense of urgency with any of this, because if there was, there'd be actual negotiations. And
the important thing here too, Patter, is this is basically, from everything I read on this today, trying to like play full catch up, because I like you said, I was like, I don't even want to.
Yeah, I didn't want to either.
This is basically the exact same plan Trump put forward.
Mm-hmm.
On spending levels, and the most important part that we can pivot into right now, where there's a ton of language in here about public-private partnerships. And I believe this is a new term I learned today reading about this. What is it called? What is it called? It is called asset recycling, which is a process through which governments and municipalities sell their existing infrastructure at a steep discount to private entities in order to fund new infrastructure.
It's like vulture funds, basically.
Yeah. So, because the important point is here, also what I forgot to mention at the top of all this description is there's no corporate tax rate, folks. Mm-hmm. No corporate tax hike. That also got scrubbed out of this. So, and remember what that was like the main thing. That was like we talked about this. That was like his main thing. I was like, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this attached to infrastructure? It doesn't even make any sense. Mm-hmm. You're guaranteeing that they're going to be like, nope. If your goal even was bipartisanship, why are you going to be like, I'm going to pass an infrastructure bill, but I'm going to make sure I tie corporate tax hikes to it?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck? It doesn't even. This was always a reconciliation bill from jump. We just wasted 3 fucking months of me having a high blood pressure rate and a bunch of talking heads wasting their fucking time doing media analysis on a bunch of shit that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
That's all this was. That's all this was. Fucking shell game for us to come down at the end of all this shit to 529 billion bitch ass dollars in new spending, mm-hmm. all to fall down to, we're gonna sell infrastructure to private companies. Which here, another great thing I found. You guys want a little taste of what that actually looks like? This so here in the city of Chicago, they pulled some shit like this back in 2009, where they sold 36,000 parking meters to Wall Street-led investor groups, taking back $1.15 billion for the city to plug budget holes. Now, Chicago drivers will pay approximately $11.6 billion over the 75-year life term of the deal to park, and fees are scheduled to rise as much as 800% over time. So that's what this shit looks like.
Yeah.
Just to give you an example, because there is no other infrastructure that private entities will invest in unless it's something they can make money off.
Yeah.
So all we're talking about here is it's a use tax. This is no different than if Biden came out today and said, I'm going to do a $20 trillion tax plan, but you all have to pay $8 per gallon in gas. You're going to pay for it.
Yep.
That's exactly what we're talking about here right now, except it's going to be through parking meters. It's going to be through toll roads. It's going to be through whatever bullshit these private entities end up snapping up, and however they tax your ass and send you a private bill instead of the government sending you one.
Right.
That's all this is.
Yeah.
That's all this is.
Oh, so, 715 billion infrastructure bill after all this fucking back and forth. That's what the House passed. I can't believe, but I can believe. And I don't. We've said it. I think in the last fucking 4 or 5 episodes, I've finished the podcast with me being just like, just after we talked it through, I'm like, what the fuck? How does this continue to happen?
And I mean, and this is, folks, this is why, like, anybody who's been on this journey the whole time, and like, you know, I'm probably, I think I'm like somewhat like, as far as all the people I know, political minded people I know personally, like, I'm pretty left, right? But for the most part, like, I feel like a lot of people who've been on this journey with me, especially folks who I met this year, like, yeah, I probably seemed like a crazy guy, whatever, but it's like, yo, we've had the crystal ball this whole time. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what was going to happen, because if you peeled the layers back and saw all the language that was being put in, all the exceptions, all of the caveats, all the mea culpas that were laid at our feet around all of these giant plans that were being called for after Biden won his presidency, I'm just saying, like, it wasn't that surprising. And here, I mean, I'm done with this. I can't even talk about this shit anymore. But I have, on this topic, I have like the perfect cherry on top, if you want, real quick.
Do it.
So just to give perspective on how insane some of these folks who are in power politically in our country, and how, honestly, just cynically, a lot of people in our media are on this topic of infrastructure and how little fucks they give. Consider this headline from USA Today. Quote, bipartisan infrastructure deal would give a bigger boost to the economy than Biden's plan. The first paragraph, quote, the bipartisan infrastructure deal that President Joe Biden embraced last week would add hundreds of billions of dollars to the economy by 2050, in contrast to the economic drag of his original proposal, according to a new analysis. The difference is the corporate taxes that Biden proposed raising when he laid out his initial infrastructure plan, which are not a part of the bipartisan agreement. Biden argued his proposal would create good jobs and strengthen the economy while making corporations pay their fair share. But economists at the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton, I do declare
Wharton School of Business. Didn't Donald Trump go there?
Wharton School, they calculated that the higher taxes would decrease firms' incentives to invest and disincentivize saving by households. So look at how fucking sick in the mind these people are that they're trying to spin this positively.
Spin.
Oh, well, the bipartisan plan is actually good for the economy. Folks, when we're talking about infrastructure, you know what good for the economy means? It means shitty for you. It means shitty for you.
Yeah.
That's what it means. Infrastructure isn't about turning a profit, you fucking retards.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to say that. I'm sorry. You idiots. I apologize. It's not supposed to be for that.
Yeah.
That's not the point.
Right.
But look, this is manufactured consent right here, right in front of your face, because the media understands that this has to be spun. This has to be, because Democrats just spent the last 3 months telling you about their grand plans and how phenomenal they were and how awesome they were. They beat Trump. They spun Georgia. They did all these things.
Do we have a quote from communications director yet on this, or?
I got nothing from the White House. Not in any of the articles I read. Nothing.
I mean,
they're not even. I don't think anybody's even asking. Who cares? None of these people care. They don't care. It's amazing. And the last sentence there in that quote, it would decrease firms' incentives to invest. No one was asking any firms to invest in infrastructure at all, ever, at any point in this process. No one was. Not until this bipartisan deal came up, where they started talking about selling assets to government assets to private companies, and then disincentivize saving by households. Folks, I thought we were in inflation. What do you mean? No, we don't want anyone to save. We want everybody to spend their money, right? Saving's the problem.
Turn off your ACs.
Yeah, this doesn't even make any sense. Saving by households was a big part of what led to the inflation you were all just crying about a month ago in USA Today, Wall Street Journal, New York Times. What happened? What changed? Wait, Wharton, aren't they like the top law school or something? One of them?
Business school,
aren't they So what is this? This doesn't even make any sense. There's no political analysis in this. This is just straight up like, I'm a numbers person, and the economy getting a boost is good.
Yeah. And you know what's really infuriating by all this as well is that, like, how much time have we spent talking about infrastructure now since Infrastructure Week? When was that? Like fucking 9 months ago? Was that 9 months ago? I feel like it was.
I don't know.
Infrastructure year. But like this was one of the big things as like his agenda. What else were some of the big ticket items on his agenda?
Dude, there was
but I don't know what he's going to plan to roll into next. That he thinks he's going to fucking get some, bipartisan.
Well, I mean, the big concerning thing is there's no talk of a reconciliation bill after this. Like everything I read, there's no statement from the party or Joe about what they're in. Like I said, with my whole joke with the girlfriend and the after thing, like they're not even saying that anymore. So it's like, well, are you still doing that? Like, what's happening?
He's too busy bombing. Didn't he bomb Iran this week too, or Iraq? Sorry, Afghanistan.
Syria,
one of them.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yep. Man, bro,
Yeah.
You try to give a guy some props, and it's just like, man, this ain't great. This ain't it, folks. This ain't it. I mean, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to call it right now. If there is not a reconciliation, I don't care what it's for. I don't care if it's for voting rights. I don't care if it's for the infrastructure bill. I don't care what it is for. $15, whatever. If there's not an infrastructure bill done, and I mean done, like passed, at least in the House, through reconciliation before the end of September, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, keep set match. That's it.
Yeah, they're going to lose the House, the Senate, and the presidency next time around.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Because like we talked about on an earlier podcast, there will be a wild budget fight this year. The government will be shut down, guaranteed. Has been for 5 years in a row.
And that'll be Republicans by design doing that. This is all a tactic.
Yeah,
a successful fucking one. I'm starting to sound like you over here. I'm fucking shouting.
Bro, I'm not. I can't. I don't know. I don't know.
You have no shouts left in you after this.
I don't know what to say anymore because honestly, it's like, you try to be You try to be optimistic. You try to break things down for what they are, but then it almost feels disingenuous of me sometimes to be like, oh, I think he can do that.
We gotta do a movie review next week. I can't.
Yeah.
I
Well, no, I think we should just hit some straight foreign topics next week. We gotta leave. We gotta get on a boat and sail away from America for a little while.
I was going to suggest in our pre-production call. This is 100 years of the Communist Party in China.
Oh yeah, China's thing. I was reading about that.
Yeah, 100 years old. And I was reading about it. I was listening to some podcasts on it too, and pragmatic approach. Like obviously the position that China is in right now, and not to go into that, but like comparing China to America right now, and the strength of China versus America right now is incredible. Now, I'm not saying that China is right on everything that it's doing, but in terms of Xi Jinping being in a fucking position of strength, as opposed to America right now, there's something to be said for he's able to stand there in front of all his party members and say, us at 100 years of age, the Communist Party, here we are, strong. They've successfully tackled coronavirus to this point. No matter what you say, or the origins of it, obviously we know where it came from, but everyone is kind of doing the party line over there to success. You look at, but then he was able to like contrast it with what has happened in America. Republicans, Democrats can't agree on fucking anything. Their elections was a mess. He just went down the line of it. And, it's much like where America pits itself against China and tries to pit China as the enemy. For lack of a better word, there's jealousy amongst the two of them too. It's like it's interesting, and I think we should do a foreign topic that we don't fucking talk about America for once, because we are singing the same tune when it comes to the party politics that no matter what the fucking issue is. Right. And it's interesting to look at something like we talked about what's happening in France. We talked about what's happening, and I mentioned, what's happening in Germany, which very interestingly, if you do want to take a look at that episode from Frontline, I watched about 20 minutes of it last night, and, the people in Germany are worried as well, and it kind of speaks to what you were saying, what's happening in France as well. It's very interesting. But I think we should. I think we should kind of steer away from some of these American topics.
Yeah,
for next week.
Just for context, folks, we were having a pre-production call the other day. 1,000 active military in France signed on to a letter where a bunch of ex-generals were basically threatening to coup the government because, they were like, you're not right-wing enough.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't think France is serious about that, the word coup is French.
Yes. They are the OGs of coups, dog.
Yeah.
I think that, we should make a pivot, because there's a ton of great stories. I felt handcuffed this week because it was so many of these things had crossover with things we talked about in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, the Nina Turner story was a bright spot. I think that's just funny, because she's dunking on everyone. No matter what they do, she's probably gonna win.
Right, and I had no desire to talk about fucking the District of New York, Southern District of New York, fucking putting charges with the Trump organization, because all that is fucking resistance think they're getting a win.
It's a busy box.
It is.
It's like a little Rubik's Cube for them to do.
And it'll be on CNN and MSNBC and all this thing, but it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Worst case scenario, Weisselberg pays fines. No one's going to prison.
Yeah.
Folks, the days of they got Al Capone for that's not.
No.
We're in another universe.
And he's not gonna flip on Trump.
Right.
Yeah. It's just. Yeah. Let's do a different country next week.
All right. Yeah. I'm for that, bro. We can, me, I'll dive into anything. You send me something I don't know nothing about, we can talk about it.
And just a heads up, folks, I'm going to Ireland this month.
Hey.
So I might do I'll bring the mic maybe. We'll do cross-channel, across the ocean, foreign and domestic. I'll be on the beat. I'll be on the street with the fucking camera or with the microphone. Be like Ramon Mile, reporting live.
I was gonna say you're gonna have the rolling hills, the backdrop there.
Yeah, I might have some rolling hills. Might have some city action. You never know.
There you go.
Fishing.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But
you gotta at least do some stuff that we can clip up for the show.
Well,
even if I end up doing a solo stream, I'll pull some of your social stuff off and let the viewers experience the.
Well, in all seriousness,
the world
and I said it to you, I'm interested to talk to people because Ireland had one of the most and still had one of the most intensive lockdowns of any country. So I want to hear actually how people feel because we're at that point now in lockdown, coronavirus, whatever you want to call it, is that, people are over it one way or the other.
Yeah.
Whether you're for masks, against masks, the fatigue is real now. And shit's about to open up again. There's people talking about the Delta variant, and I saw Johnson & Johnson said that it's successful against the Delta variant that a company research has found. Just saw that today.
Did they revise it?
Yeah,
because the initial study said it was poop.
It must have been revised because it came up today. But we won't get into that. That's another fucking whole episode as well. Shit. But yeah, so that was episode 20.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the whole 20 episodes they were negotiating the infrastructure bill, were they?
Yeah, I mean almost. Well, to be fair, I think we started in like February, so not quite.
Not quite, but almost.
Not quite. Yeah, not quite.
Shit, I'm gonna need to go get some beers. The weekend has landed. Any plans for the weekend, Ramon? Doing anything?
Just a little 4th celebration with the in-laws.
Oh yeah.
Nothing too crazy.
The 4th of July is this. I'm doing some concrete work tomorrow.
Nice. There you go.
Oh yeah, because I wasn't able to go today, so I said, "Fuck it, I'll do Saturday instead. Finish at 9:30."
Some Saturday hours. Very nice.
Don't tell the government. All right. Well, I got nothing else left in me.
Yeah, me neither. I'm all spent, man.
Yeah.
It was good stuff, though.
Yep. Have a good 4th of July. Happy birthday, America. Or if you're in the 1616 project. I won't go there either.
Oh yeah, guys. Now that it's out now. If you missed the last live, go back and check on Spotify. We had a little critical race theory chop up.
Yeah.
We got into it a little bit. I feel like
is episode 19? Episode 19 isn't out, the War on Drugs one?
Oh, it's not. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. The 18 had critical race theory.
Yeah.
It was the Ilhan Omar and all that. The War on Drugs one I'm like very close to putting out right now. I just got to finish it up.
And the critical race theory, even since we talked about it, I've seen so much more shit about people just not understanding what it is, and the right are having a field day thinking they know what it is and trying to like characterize everything as critical race. It's wild.
Well, I mean, that's why I tried to couch it that way in the episode when we talked about it. I was like, I've listened to dozens of people talk about this. I've read a ton of stuff, but I didn't take a course on this shit. Right. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But it's one of those things I don't really think you need to, especially if you like I said, if you have the framing of like the true history of America.
Yeah,
it's not like
right there.
It's not world shattering.
It's right there.
Yeah,
it's
right
right
like,
fucking there.
Okay.
You don't need to critically think about it. It's like, you had things like redlining. You had things like fucking all these different things that structurally made it more difficult for certain races.
Yep.
But I got nothing left, Ramon.
Yeah, I'm all set, buddy.
All right. Peace, folks. Have a good weekend. Happy 4th of July. Happy infrastructure year.